But the Dodgers certainly have had an interesting offseason. Now they lose Gavin Lux for the season with a torn ACL. The Dodgers are still going to win a hell of a lot of games, but what is their strength this season relative to what it was going into last season and during last season?
They're stars at the front of the roster. They're not going to be as deep as they've been in other years. Now, partially that's by choice. They're trying to rejigger the payroll, likely in an effort to chase Shohei Ohtani next winter. That's certainly been a goal of theirs. They let Turner go. They're managing payroll with an eye towards 2024. So it's going to be more reliant on the Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith group. It's going to be more reliant on keeping Clayton Kershaw healthy and Julio Urias getting him through a 7-month season. They're going to be more front-loaded than they've been in other years. And I say the other thing they're relying upon is the organizational ability to max out the ability of their players. Now, they've gone out and gotten J.D. Martinez. Now, Martinez looks like he's at the end of his career, but he's going to be working with the batting coach that it was one of the key men who helped change his swing and rejuvenate his career. We know what the Dodgers can do, just kind of picking up arms here and there. They've done it with Evan Phillips in the past. We're going to see if they can do it with Jimmy Nelson now, with Shelby Miller, who Cardinals fans remember him they traded him away years ago, but he's been injured for a very long time now. So it's going to be about the organization, the front guys on the organization, the players, the front guys on the roster, and then their ongoing ability to take free talent, basically, and turn it into contributors.
Do you believe, and I did read your piece about San Diego and the Padres making the deal with Machado, and you were explaining, if I'm interpreting this correctly, you were explaining that that team has a lot of strengths, besides their offense. But with the Dodgers having, by Dodger standards, some real challenges this year, is this you expect San Diego to win that division, and where does San Francisco or even Arizona fit into that whole National League West?
I mean, if you're the Giants or the Diamondbacks, you're probably not going to have a better chance than this year. The Dodgers, who have looked like 105, 110-win team in recent years, don't seem likely to get anywhere near that. As much as I do like the Padres, they seem like a conventional good team, 90 to 95 wins. So, maybe not so much the Giants. So I just don't think they have the talent level for it. We saw them this year try to get Aaron Judge, try to get Carlos Correa. They ended up settling for a lot of 3-win players. I'm not sure that gets them over the top. That Diamondbacks team, though, I'm intrigued by them, Bernie. You look at that young talent. Corbin Carroll came up at the end of last year. He's the top prospect in baseball right now. You look at the hitters they brought along, Jake McCarthy and Josh Rojas. They made a really interesting trade, trading away Dalton Varsho, who had a breakout year last year, to get a young, potentially stud catcher in Gabriel Moreno. Gabriel Moreno won't show up on a lot of your prospect lists because he basically had too many days on the roster last year, but he would also be a top 10 prospect if he was around. The pitching isn't quite there yet. You look at Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. I keep talking about ex-Cardinals on this interview, don't I? But you look at, they have some starters coming up through the system. Dre Jameson, Ryan Nelson, Brandon Pfaadt. I'm not sure if those guys are going to be able to throw enough innings in the majors this year to have an impact. But there is a scenario where the Arizona Diamondbacks just say, we're going to push those guys forward and try to win as many games as possible. They'll probably arrive in 2024. And, of course, the Dodgers will be better than the Padres will be basically running back this really good team. But if they decide to go for it this year, I like their chances to, at the very least, be a wild card threat. But as you originally asked, Padres, Dodgers, I now think with the Lux injury, that's enough to push me towards the Padres. They were really close. And this injury cost the Dodgers about 3 to 4 wins pending them making a trade to make up for it. I think the Padres now are, we'll call it, between those two teams, like a 55-45 favorite over the Dodgers.
Joe Sheehan with us from the Joe Sheehan newsletter. You can find out more about it. We're going to talk about it. But you can take a sneak peek by going to joesheehan.com, joesheehan.com. And please follow Joe on Twitter at Joe_Sheehan. So wanted to get that out there on our first visit of the since the spring training cycle began. And so this is a good day. Since the other day you sent a text, I actually talked about it on the air, and you were saying, like, in effect, like, my goodness, the Cardinals have like 18 players who you would look at and say, oh yeah, they're big league guys, or at least they should get the opportunity. And if they have like 13 jobs. And Joe, I wanted you to talk about that because no one's saying they're the 27 Yankees, but I think there is a kind of a lack of appreciation by how the kind of depth that they've assembled, not so much with the starting pitching or even the bullpen, but in terms of position player talent. They've been really, really successful as far as putting a lot of good players on a roster, and it just never seems to run out. I mean, their farm system, player development system has been really good since about 2000, but it's sort of had a resurgence as of late. So I just wanted to get your thoughts more expansive about how you see the Cardinals and what you make of the fact that they have so much good young talent right now.
Yeah, I was looking. I think there was a Jordan Walker highlight and then a Mason Wynn highlight. And I started thinking about possibly neither one of those guys making the roster, and they need to make cases for both of them already being major league players. You look at this team now, and there's some disappointment with Dylan Carlson and Nolan Gartman, but those are first-round picks that they pushed to the major leagues. They've been incredible in the majors, and now they're starting to do the Cardinals thing again, where they turn a seventh-round pick in Brendan Donovan into a player. Second-round pick in Alec Burleson. I was actually there last year for his major league debut. There are just these guys coming along who are going to be major league contributors. And again, I look at Walker in another camp might already have the right field job. Of course, the Cardinals having so many outfielders, it's going to be very hard for them to get them all into the lineup, get them all into the roster. Mason Wynn is somebody who, frankly, he's probably a two-win player right now just with the glove. I think if you stuck him in the majors today, he would be a glove for – he would not hit, but he'd be a glove for a shortstop, and he'd be able to carry. And there are plenty of teams that don't even have that. So, again, I look at that player development. You look at this team right now, and you think about the Goldschmidt and Arenado trade. They didn't give up a ton in either trade, but they gave up Carson Kelly. They gave an Austin Gomber, Elihuris Montero. These are guys who are going to be contributing in the major league this year. So, yeah, I think that player development and how they've used it has been a real strength for them. And that's going to show up through the year because, Bernie, we don't talk about 25, 26-man rosters anymore. We talk about the top 35 guys in an organization because you're going to have injuries. You're going to have fall-offs. And when you have that kind of depth, excuse me, it's my first interview of the year, too. I'm stumbling a little bit here. When you have that kind of internal depth, like the Rays do, like the Dodgers typically do, you look at the Guardians in Cleveland. This is what the best teams in baseball do now. They build out 35-man rosters. The Cardinals have that. And certainly on the position player side, the pitching, certainly there were more question marks. But the Cardinals right now go as deep in position players as any team in baseball.
Yeah, and I expect some bounce back from guys too, and I'm really excited seeing Lars Nootbaar for a full season because this guy over the last 3 months of last season, I mean, I'm factually speaking here, he's one of the best hitters in baseball, and I mean short list. You can do that. Go to Fangraphs and just enter it from, say, July 1st or so to the end of the season, and you'll see him way up there high among players that had at least 250 plate appearances over that time. You'll see him very high on all the lists and most of the categories. So he's a pretty exciting talent. And fellow stat heads, we mutual friends of ours, have just been, I don't mean this as a criticism, just going nuts over him. I mean, it's just like he's one of the most, like he's probably the number one touted breakout guy. All the stuff I've been reading with people that I know are stat heads and understand StatCast and are kind of blown away by what he's done with across the board with his StatCast stuff.
And it's not just a breakout rookie or anything. I mean, if you look at last year, and we talked about this on the air last summer, when the Cardinals went to that, when Marmo went to that Nootbaar, Donovan top of the lineup, at least against right-handers, the team blew up. That drove the offense. It was one of the reasons they caught the Brewers from behind and ended up winning the division. So I think you put OBP guys like that on top of the lineup ahead of slugging guys like Schmidt or Arenado. You've got an incredible offense. So we haven't seen that early on. I be honest with you, Bernie, early season lineups, early spring lineups can be driven by a lot of things. I think when we get 3 weeks in, though, I want to see if Ollie goes back to that top four again because that was a big part of that run last year.
Joe Sheehan with us. Joe, I want to ask you this because I consider you, lack of a better term, and I apologize, when it comes to things like banning the shift, you're in favor of it, and you believe there will be some impact, but you're not going nuts over it. I mean, you're kind of a moderate, which I appreciate. But so rather than me speak for you, what do you make of it now that it's in place, even in spring training? I'm not asking you to interpret results in spring training, but how do you think this will go? And you did write about this. You talked about batting averages going up, singles going way up. What do you think the impact will be, at least in the first year?
Just to be clear, Bernie, I don't like banning the shift. I think it's a terrible idea.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
I know.
I screwed up, my man.
It's okay. I'm on the minority. Most people seem to like it. I personally think you get 7 fielders, you put your fielders where they think the ball is going to go. And banning that is taking away 140 years of baseball history. And I think it's bad because it's going to encourage hitters, to hit that the way they have been, which is let's try to pull everything, let's try to yank everything. And now when they miss-hit the ball, they're going to get singles out of it. So you're not actually pushing guys away from hitting that way. So, no, I don't think this is a good idea. I do think, though, that just by sheer dint of not letting fielders play where the ball is going to be hit, you'll probably add back about 1,000 to 1,500 singles over the course of the season. That should be enough to push batting averages back up, maybe 7 or 8 points. I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room around this. Because remember, teams are still going to put their fielders where they think the ball is going to go with the limitations in place. So the second baseman is still going to be pushed over. The shortstop with left-handed hitters up is still going to be playing as far up the middle as he can legally. It's just that space between the second baseman and the right fielder is going to be an entitlement zone for left-handed hitters. Hit the ball there, you're entitled to a hit. So, like I said, it'll push batting averages back up. I think a lot of the benefit of these rules changes for MLB is getting the people who like the rules changes to talk about them positively. There's a lot of positive coverage of baseball right now, which isn't always the case. So when you have everybody talking about, oh, it's so great that there's no shift anymore, and oh, it's so great that there's a pitch clock, even if I personally don't agree with some of these things, and I'm agnostic on the pitch clock, I just think if you have that many people saying, yay, baseball, it's probably good for the game.
And I apologize, man. I'm what you just said there, talking about why you don't like the shift, we've had that conversation a number of times. I don't know where my brain was there for a minute, so thank you for
It's spring training, man. It's absolutely spring training for all of us.
There's been a lot. I did want to ask you one shift-related thing. I'm going to localize it. As you know, the Cardinals do not strike out many hitters. In the last 2 years, their starting pitchers especially were down. I think it was like 18.3% strikeout rate the last 2 seasons. And the ball's in play a lot. I mean, I think they're 4th over the last 2 seasons, their pitchers, in terms of allowing, batted balls in play. So on one hand, there's this thought like, well, wait a minute, you got that great defense, that infield defense especially, so, the Cardinals are still going to be fine even with the shift. But then you look at all the batted balls in play that we expect, and maybe they will take a little bit of a hit there. But I'm still of the belief that there's nothing to worry about. I think their defense is still going to be elite. Maybe they'll give up a few more hits, but I don't think it's anything to sweat about. I could be wrong. We're going to wait and see what happens.
Well, one thing you remember is that the Cardinals shifted. This is according to Statcast. Relatively less than their peers. They were 20th in the league overall.
Right.
They were in the bottom 5 in shifts against with the left-handed batters at the plate. So you would expect the Cardinals to be affected less. I get the balls in play thing, obviously, that you would expect them to be affected more, but they were already not shifting as much as other teams, so they should be affected less. So I think it all comes out in the wash. We know that Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, probably not going to be very affected by the shift. The middle infield, Tommy Edmonds scored very well in all the Statcast metrics last year. He was a very good second baseman. He was a surprisingly good shortstop. You look at second base, what is Brendan Donovan? If he ends up there, what is Nolan Gorman? I think Gorman is somebody who was probably helped by positioning, where he's not a great lateral range guy. But we have to see how the playing time shakes out in the infield before knowing, who's going to be there and who it's going to affect. So generally speaking, though, I'm not that worried about the Cardinals in terms of the shift ban hurting them. I am, as ever, concerned about a team that doesn't strike out a lot of batters.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, the point to make, in effect, against the shift, against the banning of the shift. Because the strikeout rates every year, as you know, go up, and then they go up, and they go up, and they go up, and they go up. Well, your shift doesn't matter if hitters are putting the ball in play lesser than they've ever been. And so there's still going to be, even with the shift ban now, there's still going to be a real question about strikeout rates, the escalation, and are there going to be fewer balls in play because there's more strikeout pitchers than ever? So if it's going to be fewer balls in play, that reduces the impact, or at least the perceived impact, of putting this rule in.
Right. Baseball's problem isn't where the shortstop is standing. Baseball's problem is that the shortstop doesn't have enough to do. And none of these changes affect the strikeout rate. None of these changes affect the pitcher-batter matchup. The fact that, frankly, in 2023, the pitcher is too close to the hitter. If you had these level of skills in 1893, you would have pushed the mound further back. That's been my argument for a while. None of these changes encourage hitters to hit differently. You're not bringing contact hitters into the game. One of the things that was speculated is that a pitch clock would make pitchers less effective. But if you look at the minor league data, Baseball America did some great work on this. Velocity did not change in leagues that went from the not having the pitch clock to the pitch clock. So, Bernie, you said it at the top. I don't care about any of the spring training data because the games don't matter. Nobody's trying to win. In the same way, I don't really care that much about the minor league data because you can't tell me who won the Pacific Coast League last year.
That's right.
We're not going to get real tests of this stuff until the regular season begins and teams have to start playing to win. We're not going to get tests of this stuff. We're not going to know until 3 months in when relievers are throwing three times in 4 days under the pitch clock, when starters are throwing 30 pitch innings with the pitch clock. Like I said, I'm waiting until June before I really get a sense of what all this means.
And so one more thing about the rules. Do you like the enlarged bases, and do you think that's going to make any kind of meaningful difference?
I'm curious. I would say I have the least strong opinion about the larger bases, which they do make things a little more safe around the bag. That's their initial purpose, is to give the infielders and the base runners more space around the bag so they avoid collisions. That's a good idea. It could have an effect. It moves the first and second base together about 4.5 inches, less than 1%. But if you think about how we measure these things, we measure catcher pop times to the hundredths of a second. Think about how close a lot of plays on the bases are. If you shorten the distance by 4.5 inches, you could have an effect on the safe and out and whether it makes sense to try to steal this bag. And when you combine that with the limits on pickoffs, you can throw over twice now, and on the third one, you either have to pick off the batter or it's a balk. That gives the runner an advantage. We saw these rules raise stolen base rates in the minors about 25%. Jason Collette of Reds for RotoWire was saying online the other day, he expects to see about 25% increase in stolen base attempts this year. So that's, I think, the most fascinating one, Bernie, because there's a lot of people that would like to see the stolen base put back in the game. The catch is that if stolen bases become too easy, stolen base success rates in the minors were about 78% under these rules, that takes the drama out of it. The tension of a stolen base is, will he be safe? If he's safe almost all the time, that takes the tension out of it. So
that's a great point.
That's the one where I just don't know how it's going to play out. And I'm fascinated to see. And again, I want to make the point again. It's going to be, talk to me in April, talk to me in May. How are pitchers going to adapt to this new reality? How are base runners going to adapt? That's the one I'm fascinated by because there's so much uncertainty around it.
Joe, one more thing. I'm going to put this on a tee for you. I'm sure you were amused when MLB headquarters basically declared their intention to form a committee, in effect, to do something about these big spending owners that are just, totally distorting or ruining the that increasing that gap between the haves and the have-not. I'm doing a bad job explaining this. I just chuckled. So it's like, oh, okay. So the guys that are trying to win are the problem in baseball. The ne'er-do-well in Pittsburgh. So, you want to protect him? Someone who doesn't try to win. I don't know how that helps your sport when you've got all these teams in the bag every year. Oh, they're the problem. They're not the problem. They're the victims, huh? I always thought the people that try to win, we can question their judgment, how they spend their money, but they're trying to win. And I think that's all what fans want. MLB is so warped with this stuff. It's like no matter what these poor-mouthing owners do, it's like they're never really held accountable. No one raises hell about them except fans and some media. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember the Blue Ribbon Committee in the 1990s. And they're still having – you remember, these are still the same fights. It's never been owners versus players. I mean, it's been a little bit owners versus players. But it's been the fights within the ownership. You know, the teams owned in large cities that can generate a lot of revenue locally, and the teams in small cities. Well, what's different now from the 1990s is that there's a robust system of revenue sharing. The Yankees, Dodgers, Angels, Cubs, whoever you want to name, send hundreds of millions of dollars of the money they make locally to teams in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Kansas City. And we talk about this like that doesn't exist. Like Bob Nutting isn't getting $60 million a year in corporate welfare with a $58 million payroll, whatever he's run. And that because in part because the specific numbers are held very tightly by Major League Baseball. I think if we had a list every year of the welfare payments from the Yankees to the Pirates, from the Dodgers to the Reds, it would put these conversations in a different context. But I come back to, and I know we're coming up against the top of the hour here. I have one thing that I've been saying over and over now for a couple of years. If you can afford the team, you can afford the players. And if you can't, sell. But that's the thing. If you're rich enough to buy a baseball team, I really don't want to hear you whine about how hard you have it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They can be much more competitive. They don't care. They're not trying. Joe, before you go, and again, thanks for your time, man. It was a good, long conversation. I appreciate it very, very much. Tell us about the newsletter, the best way for people to try it out, get a look at it, sample it, if you will, and then if they sign on, what can they expect?
Yeah, this is now the 14th straight season I've been writing the Joe Sheehan Baseball newsletter. I started in spring of 2010. And I love writing about baseball. It's no one thing every day. It'll be stat stuff. It'll be analysis. It'll be, hey, I went to a game in St. Louis and this is what happened to me. Just all kinds of stuff. This is a great time to sign on too, because you've got the run up to the season preview at the end of the month. Just a lot of really good content, I think. And like I say, I'm definitely a stat head, Bernie. You know that. You've been reading me for 30 years. But I like to think that I present it in a way that's readable and engaging and enjoyable, and even something you can laugh at every now and then. Not laugh at, we'll say laugh with. And laugh at is a different thing.
And you're self-deprecating, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I want to have fun with it. I want people to like baseball as much as I do, even if some days I don't like baseball as much as I used to. But I love the game, seriously, I do. And I've been following it for almost 50 years now, and hope people will check it out. It's joesheehan.com. If you go there today, you see excerpts of stuff I've written recently. There's yesterday's newsletter, which I posted free, which is kind of a summary of my position on the new rules and some of the questions I want to see asked. There's sign-up information on the side. There's an email link if you want to write in and ask me questions. But like I said, I've been able to do this now between prospectus and the newsletter for almost 30 years, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do it, and it's because the readers support it. So I hope if you're listening, you'll be the next one.
Well, full-hearted endorsement for me. And you're right. Another compliment for you. In fact, I'm a little envious because I have not yet conquered this problem in my own writing. I love stats. I love numbers. I like kind of busting up like stupid narratives. But I tend to write too many stats where, it kind of loses the impact of the message you're trying to deliver. Because even I don't want to sit there and read 25 inches of number. So I get out of control with that sometime, even on the air, although I've done much better with that, not reading numbers on the air, because that's not exactly the greatest radio. You just got to pick out the one that really matters, the 1 or 2, 3 that really matters, and then drive it home. So I just try to do, my flaw with that is I'm like everything but the kitchen sink type guy, and that's really stupid. So you're a good example for me. You're a good role model.
Thank you for that.
You really are. So I may call you for some tutoring or something, because you can set me straight. All you got to do is snap at me a couple times, and I'll be, yeah, you're right. You're right. So, hey, listen, man, thank you. I love you, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll do this more often than we have, based on your time, or if you feel like doing it. But you're welcome to come on anytime. And we want to sell some newsletters here.
Always good talking ball, Bernie. Take care.
All right, that's our friend Joe Sheehan here on the Bernie Show. I love that dude. He's crabby like me. He's sarcastic like me. He's a hell of a lot smarter than me. And I really mean this. I have learned so much from him through the years. He's one of the people that just gave me a much different way to look at baseball. And frankly, I think it's a smarter way to look at baseball as long as you don't go nuts with some of the stuff. Like Joe and I had this conversation over dinner when he was in St. Louis last season. And, there's some things that, I pull away from the pack from, like don't tell me that RBIs don't matter. I mean, as I always like to say, so the guy that scored, did a helicopter drop him off at home plate? So there's some old school stuff that I'm very much adamant about. I offer warnings though, like Brian Kenny's like, eliminate the win, kill the pitcher wins. No, you don't have to do that. But people that watch the game, care about the game, write about the game, talk about the game, just need to understand that win totals can be extremely misleading. So just filter it a little bit. Don't tell me like a guy who's 11-12 had a lousy season because he's 11-12, but that 11-12 occurred because, and this is like Miklasz last year, like his team whatever reason had a hard time scoring runs when he pitched, and that's just kind of a fluke thing. But you have to say, well, he wasn't that good. He was 11-12. Well, why don't you look at the games and take some time to look at the games and see how many runs they scored for him, how many times they scored no runs or 1 run or 2 runs for him. Well, Gibson would have shut up. No, it's not. Bob Gibson's not here. I'm talking about he's not applicable to today's pitching. Not really. So there's things like that. Like I won't abandon some of my old school preferences. Others I will. I don't care about batting average. To me, you get 27 outs. They're precious commodities. Earl Weaver taught me this. Why would you want to waste outs? Why would you want to give away outs? I don't care if a guy gets on base as long as he gets on base. The whole key is getting people on base and driving them in and avoiding outs. Don't make outs. That's like the number one objective. Do not make outs. And if you don't make outs, you're going to have a much better chance to score a lot of runs. But in our town and many, many other towns, it's like, batting average is everything. It's not. I appreciate a really good batting average. Show me the guy's on-base percentage first. That's all I'm saying. So with some of this stuff, I like to kind of meet you halfway. I do recognize that I go too far with the numbers. You've heard me allude to it on the air. Same with my writing. I'm trying to kind of find that happy medium the way Joe has. And that's the only reason why I'm talking about this right now. Because really, he does motivate me. Because I look up to him so much with his knowledge. And we disagree about stuff. I was mad at him at dinner. Well, not mad. I was frustrated. Because he said, do you really think Yadier Molina is a Hall of Famer? I said, Joe, we're not going to have this conversation. I'm just shocked. But let's continue to enjoy our meal, But he said, he says this will sound crazy and you may not respect this because it does sound kind of flaky, but I understood where he's coming from. He said, unless you're actually at Busch Stadium for games, and he was here for, I think, 3 games, unless you're actually here for games, and he said, for me, it was the first time. He said, if you're watching on TV or whatever, you have no idea how much a guy like Yadier Molina is revered in St. Louis and what he means to that franchise. He said, I was blown away by it. I mean, it's just like you can't tell it if you're watching at home in New York. You get a little bit of an idea, but he said until you're in the stadium and you just see it all play out. So I think that changed his perception a little. And I told him, I said, look, man, just check out his catcher ERA. Just check out his the lack of stolen base attempts for him the whole time he played, even to the end when he was breaking down. The fact that it isn't that how many people get caught up in like stolen base percentages, as they should a little bit. To me, the thing about Molina, and I was telling Joe at dinner that night, it's like that he's old and he's broken down and he's at the end and they're still afraid to run on him. And they have been afraid to run on him since he came up in the majors in 2004. There's never been anyone who has suppressed a base-stealing part of the running game or who has picked off base runners the way he has. So, yeah, I mean, it's frustrating when I hear even someone I love like Joe Sheehan just like he's not sure or whatever. And Joe's really smart. That's why that's why it kind of disappointed me. But I think he's found the religion now. I think he's found the religion.
You know, that is the narrative outside of this market, and it's to the credit what you just described. You watch him every day like we have, you realize the value and how great he is. And the run game, it's just stuff you don't notice. There's really not a stat for that in terms of on a day-in, day-out basis. We go, yeah, they don't even attempt, guys. They don't even think about it. It's not even a thought. And you can tell when you watch a game what the difference is. If you got a group that's going to just, we'll run whenever we want to on this guy. It's amazing to watch that play itself out. We're going to get a new guy this year, so we'll see how that plays itself out. I know Contreras can throw. We do have a text that says, I think the pickoff rule is stupid. Doesn't like the fact that you get limited pickoff throws over to first base.
Well, I'm good with it, but I'm not going to criticize anybody who disagrees on it because we're all kind of waiting to see what transpires with this stuff. My thing about it is that I think anything that's going to promote or accelerate more action on the bases is good for the sport, as long as it doesn't become a carnival. Whereas Joe Sheehan just said, where it becomes too easy to steal bases, because that's no fun either. It's got to be it's got to have this kind of a duel thing going on where you really don't know whether the guy's going to be able to swipe the bag or they're going to get him. Or Molina's going to throw him out. Tucker Barnhart's going to throw him out. It's like, oh man, is he really going to run against this catcher? That's what's fun about it. So I don't want to see a system where it becomes way too easy for major leaguers to steal bases, but. The game needs more action. It needs more motion. It needs more athleticism, speed, rather than the dependence on grip it, rip it, hit ball far. It just needs to have some of the action back. It have not had enough action. So I'm in favor generally of anything that is going to stimulate more action, more speed in the game. Have more managers willing to push it on the bases, those kind of things. So that's why I'm fine with it. And the other thing, I've heard so many times, and Jim Hewer and I have talked about this so many times, that people just are really frustrated with the way pitching has changed. Where it's like, I'm tired of looking at these guys where they they pitch 5 innings and give up 3 runs, and they're back in those days they're pinch hit for or whatever. And they come back to the dugout and everyone's treating them, like he's Cy Young or like he's Walter Johnson. And it's like, reasonable people, they don't expect pitchers to go 9 innings anymore. I mean, that's just, those days are gone. Even 8 innings. I mean, some of the older pitchers do it because that's how they grew up. They would go deeper into games, but. Here's another reason why I like the pickoff rule. Because, look, I don't mind the way the game has evolved, and, a fresher pitcher is considered better to go attack hitters if your starter's starting to run out of gas a little bit. I mean, I get the basic premise. But if you're a fan and you squawk and complain about pitchers not going deeper into games and they're being treated like they are Bob Gibson because they throw 5 okay innings. I don't like that either, but I understand that's part of the game. However, if that's the definition of like a guy doing a good job, I want to see the guy pushed. Now, it doesn't mean that he'll go 7-8 innings. I mean pushed in a different way. Because these guys that go through 5 innings and they act like, they were at it's the equivalent of like, Iwo Jima or something, right?
Yeah.
If they're only going to go 5 innings, 6 at the most, it's like, you know what? Don't give them breaks. Don't let them stall on the mound and walk all around, or to throw the ball over to first base just to stall and get, be able to catch their breath, be able to like restore their energy. Pitchers who go 5 innings and they're proud of it, like they've really done something, why should they be allowed to just, gratuitously throw over to first base and 90% of the time 80% of the time, it's nothing more than him trying to get a rest before his next pitch. Why make it so easy for these guys to basically take as much time as they want and walk around and dawdle and throw over to first and all the other things they do to enable themselves to regroup and to take their breath, catch their breath, and not be as tired? Why make it so easy for them, right? That's my point. And so that's why I like the pickoff rule. I don't want to see a guy waste my time or use a pickoff attempt as a way to steal time so you can be a little more energized for your next pitch. It's stupid to just give those kind of pitchers that advantage. They don't do it.
I tell you, one thing I want to add to this, it's not the same as the pickoff rule, but I think it will affect the base running. You know, we were just talking about the size of the bases. There's a limited amount of pickoffs. I'm going to throw another thing in there that I think will help with the stolen bases too, is you can't hold the ball.
Right.
You got to get the ball and go.
Right.
And
no doubt.
That will definitely play a part in it. And with the pitch clock, one other thought that it was been, we don't know until, again, like Joe said, till June, but we get a feel for this. But you know what? You're going to have to, if you're the manager, you better think about getting your relievers up because you don't have time to stall and, hey, go out and visit. Right. Go on and kick the dirt for a while to give this guy a couple more pitches. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to change, and I would love for the base stealing to come back to us.
It's going to go up.
I just want
a guy like Tommy Edman might steal 50 bags this year, and Tommy Edman's a great base runner. He was the number one rated base runner in all the majors. And last year, what did he do? He got get thrown out 2 or 3 times all season trying to steal. It was like 30 or 31 for 33 or 34, something like that. He's gonna go wild. He is gonna be fun to watch. I was laughing at something today. I really don't forget. I really don't remember where I read it, and I'm not copping out. I really don't, because I don't hesitate to question something that's written. I don't care who writes it. And people can question me. We're saying here are the guys that are going to benefit the most from the new rules as far as stealing bases. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading down the list. I'm going down and down and down and down and down. Tommy Edman's on the list. Why is that?
Really?
Is this kind of like the white men can't jump thing?
Yeah, that's.
Now, help me understand the logic. You have a guy that had an 88% stolen base success rate, something like that, and he only got thrown out 2 or 3 times all season stealing bases. And I think he was second in baseball or second in National League at stealing bases, or tied for first. I should have that information in front of me. I apologize, but you all get my drift, even if I'm off by a number, right? So, wouldn't common sense tell you that a guy that you can't throw out except a couple times, 3 times a season under the old rules, wouldn't common sense tell you that a guy like that is really going to go nuts because it's going to be easier than ever for him to steal a base? Tommy Edman's not going to benefit from that? Really?
Very good point.
I give up sometimes. So
Texter,
let me
come back.
Yeah,
real
go ahead.
Quick. He also included. He goes. I get what you guys are saying. He says I think it'll be too easy for guys to steal now because of.
Well, that's what I said. That's the only thing I wouldn't like if it happens.
Yeah, that's what he's.
You can't.
Back with.
The game needs balance restored. If you restore balance, and you come up with other ways to score runs rather than see ball, hit ball far, it just makes for a more exciting game. But if, as I said, I think 3 or 4 times during this conversation, if you make it too easy, then to me it loses its appeal.
It's going to be an interesting watch.
Yeah, Tommy Edman last year, by the way, just so I have this correct, 32 out of 35.
I knew it was
32 out of 35.
That's aggressive.
But he don't make a list of 15 players who will benefit from the new rules. He was killing it under the old rules. What? He going to get thrown out more than this year than he has? I don't think so.
No.
I sound loud, but I'm saying this smiling. It's just, it's like people say all the time about some of the stat heads, and I'm a stat head. It's like, I appreciate the effort you put into it. But do you actually watch the game? Do you spend enough time watching the game? And that's a really legitimate question because some of these people don't even know what the hell's going on, And they're writing these, massive pieces about, these are the guys. I'm telling you, my research, they're going to benefit from the new rules. And then you leave out the one guy that might be benefiting the most from the new rules. And that's another thing to talk about, but I got to take a break. Tommy Edman is going to benefit. If any player on the Cardinals, and there's a couple that I think will, but Tommy Edman, okay, class, what has been his biggest problem as a hitter? Batting left-handed against right-handed pitchers. He's below average. He'll get on little rolls with it. There's been 1 year where he's pretty good, but he's much better right-handed against lefties. He goes through these long droughts against right-handed pitching from the left side. Well, if we're going to accept the premise that there's going to be more ground balls getting through the right side of the infield, and that's where Tommy Edman hits them, right? His I don't have this in front of me, but the difference with Tommy Edman last year when the shift was put on and when there was no shift, and I can look this up during the break, huge difference. So it's not only just the base stealing. If we agree that there will be more ground balls that are going to get through that right side, Tommy Edman will be much better without the shift. And he's going to be much better, even better than he is at stealing bases. And I don't know why people that should know better don't know better and don't understand that. Anyway, probably time for me to take a break.